I want to start with a story. It's one of the stories that, when you hear it, it rearranges something in how you think about diseases. So imagine two identical twins, same DNA. Every single letter of their genetic code is the exact same. Same mom, same womb, same household, same school. And at some point in their 20s or 30s, one of them starts noticing that her vision blurs in one eye. Her left hand goes numb for a few days, and she gets so tired that she can barely get off the couch. She sees a neurologist, and the MRI it shows white spots on her brain. The diagnosis comes: you have MS, multiple sclerosis. Her twin sister, she's perfectly fine. There's no symptoms, no spots, no MS. Same genes, same childhood exposures, same everything, except trillions of bacteria living inside their guts. In 2025, a team of researchers, they collected bacteria, just bacteria, nothing else. They collected bacteria from the intestine of the twin with MS. They put those bacteria into a mouse that had been raised in a completely sterile environment, a mouse that had never encountered a single microbe in its life. And that mouse, it developed brain inflammation that looks just like MS. They did the same thing with the bacteria from the healthy twin. That mouse, completely fine. So let that sink in. I mean, same genetics, same lab, same food, same water. The only difference was whose bacteria went in. And that difference was enough to flip the switch between a healthy brain and one that was under attack. This study is one of several from the last 2 years that have fundamentally changed, that have fundamentally shifted how researchers think about MS. We've moved from there's an interesting correlation between the gut and MS to the gut is involved in MS. Because if the gut microbiome is a cause of MS, it is actually a target for treatment. And unlike your genes, your microbiome is something that can actually change. So that's what this episode is about. I'm going to take you through the full picture of what your gut bacteria actually do and the five specific channels through which they communicate with your brain and your immune system. So we're going to talk about like specific bacteria names, specific molecules, specific treatments that have been tested, and I'll even talk about what they don't know. So inside of your gut, let's talk about inside your gut. In MS, specific immune cells called T cells, they're supposed to look for infections, but somehow they got the wrong instructions with MS. They cross into your brain, they find the myelin, and they just start causing havoc. They just start tearing it up. But why? Why does the immune system turn? Like, what gives them the wrong instructions? People said it was the EBV virus or the EB virus. But then I learned that most people, they got the EB virus and they didn't develop MS. Like most people have the EB virus. They've gotten it, the mono thing. So what makes the difference? And around 2015, they started to suspect the gut. So your gut and your brain, they feel like they're two completely different things in completely different zip codes, but they're not just neighbors, they're roommates. Your gut and your brain are roommates. Even though it's like one's up here, one's down there, like they are roommates. And what happens in the gut doesn't stay in the gut. You have about 38 trillion bacteria living inside of you right now. You have more bacterial cells than human cells in your entire body. And these bacteria, they aren't passengers, they're workers. Your gut is a factory. It's a 24/7 manufacturing plant. And the products that this factory makes, they aren't random. They're specific molecules that your body depends on. Some bacteria are like electricians on a construction site. They produce molecules called short chain fatty acids. So think of these as like the power supply for immune systems, like calm down circuits. And without these electricians, the calming signals, they just go dark. Like it's like there is no, hey, calm down. It just goes dark. So some bacteria in your gut, some bacteria, they're like plumbers. They maintain the gut wall. The wall is the barrier that separates the bacteria from your intestine, from your bloodstream. And these bacteria, they keep the seal so tight that nothing gets through that shouldn't get through. Some bacteria are like chemists. They take compounds from your food and from your food and your liver, and they transform them into anti-inflammatory molecules that travel through your bloodstream all the way to your brain. When the right bacteria shows up to work every day, the factory, it runs smoothly. Your immune system, it stays balanced, and the gut wall, it stays sealed. The brain's protective barrier, it stays intact. You just feel fine, and you probably never think about your gut at all. But in people with MS, that factory is in a staffing crisis. So the electricians are quitting, the plumbers are disappearing, they're being replaced by bacteria that don't do the essential maintenance jobs, or worse, they're being replaced by bacteria that actively cause problems. The factory is still running, but it's producing the wrong products. And the wrong products, they ripple outward through the immune system all the way to your brain. And one more thing that makes this so important is about 70% of your immune cells live in or around your gut. That's a huge percentage. So your intestine, it isn't just a digestive organ. It's the largest immune organ in your body. It's the training ground where the immune cells learn what to fight and what to leave alone. So knowing this alone, like not even detailed science, it should just make you think, okay, how can someone not look into the gut, like in the gut microbiome, when it involves an autoimmune disease like MS? Like just knowing how much of the immune system is in your gut. How could you not look at the gut for the root cause, the problem here? When the bacterial community in your body's like training ground, when that changes, when the wrong bacteria are teaching the wrong lessons, the immune cells that graduate from it are miscalibrated. So they're more aggressive, they're less tolerant, they're more likely to attack things that they shouldn't. So things like your myelin. With that picture in mind, the factory, the workers, the training ground, let me show you the 5 specific pipelines that lead to brain inflammation when your gut is disrupted. And if you hear me say neuroinflammation, that's just brain inflammation. So brain inflammation, inflammation in your brain is neuroinflammation. That's basically your cells are attacking your brain, pretty much. It's turning you into a dum-dum. So let's go through the 5 pipelines, and then I'll kind of go through the details of each. But first, the 5 pipelines. So pipeline number 1, the missing brake fluid. These are the short chain fatty acids. So your gut bacteria, they are supposed to produce molecules that act like brake fluid. It's brake fluid for your immune system. And these molecules, they keep your immune system from overreacting. And well, that's what it's supposed to do. But in MS, those molecules, they're running low. Pipeline number 2, your brain's dimmer switch, tryptophan. So certain bacteria, they make compounds that travel to the brain and they turn down the inflammation brightness. But in MS, that dimmer switch is just stuck on high. It's just, you can't turn it down, it's just stuck. All right, pipeline number 3, the recycling plant. So these are secondary bile acids. Your liver, it makes bile acids, and gut bacteria, they recycle them into natural anti-inflammatory compounds. And in MS, your recycling plant is understaffed. Now, pipeline number 4. When the walls come down, that's when you get your leaky gut thing that everyone talks about. So your gut, it has a wall that keeps the bacteria and toxins. It keeps it contained. But in MS, that wall, it has cracks. And those same cracks, they appear in your brain as well. And that really sucks. And pipeline number 3, mistaken identity or molecular mimicry. So some bacteria, they have proteins that look almost identical to myelin, and your immune system, it attacks these bacteria. It attacks the bacteria, and it gets confused, and it just ends up attacking your brain. It's like, it looks the same. It's like, well, let me just attack them. So these 5 pipelines, they aren't separate, like, they're not separate systems. They're not like separate plumbing issues. They're all interconnected. They amplify each other. One problem makes the others worse. So let's start with the most studied and probably the most actionable one, pipeline number 1, the missing brake fluid. So your immune system, it has 2 pedals, just like a car. It has a gas pedal and a brake pedal. The gas pedal is your inflammatory response. It's like inflammatory response, boom. When you get a cut or you catch a virus, your immune system hits the gas. Let's go. It sends aggressive cells to fight that threat. And these are your badass warrior cells. In the world of immunology, The aggressive ones that are relevant to MS are called Th17 cells. And they're the soldiers who just shoot first, ask questions later. They're just like, boom, boom, boom. They'll ask questions later. The brake pedal is a different set of cells called regulatory T cells, or Tregs, or TREGs for short. Their only job is to literally just say, stand down, calm the F down. They're basically cops who tell soldiers, hey, false alarm, you can go home. That's what their job is. So without TREGs, the soldiers, they never stop shooting. And in MS, that brake pedal is soft. There aren't enough TREGs. And the ones that do exist, the ones that are still there, they aren't working at full strength. They're just tired. And because they're tired, the Th17 soldiers, they just go unchecked. And they cross into the blood-brain barrier, they find your myelin, they destroy it. Now, that's essentially what's happening. And here's where the gut comes into play. Your gut bacteria, specifically bacteria that eat fiber, they produce molecules called short-chain fatty acids. And the main ones are butyrate, propionate, and acetate. And these are the brake fluids for your immune system. They're literally what makes the brake pedal work, these short-chain fatty acids. And here's how. So when butyrate enters an immune cell, it does something really interesting because every cell in your body has DNA, damn near every cell. It's like your genetic instruction manual. That's what DNA is. But not all the instructions are open at the same time. So some pages of the book are closed shut. Butyrate goes in and it opens the pages for a gene. It opens the book. You have a gene that turns a regular immune cell into a TREG, into a Treg cell. And that gene, the gene that turns a regular immune cell into a TREG, is closed. You need that brake cell. You want to open that book. You need butyrate to open that book. More butyrate means more pages are open, which means more brake cells are produced. These fatty acids, they also work through something I think of as like doorbells. These are specific receptors that think of it as like a molecular doorbell, I guess, on the surface of your immune cells, like doorbells, a molecular doorbell on the surface of your immune cells. Think of it like that. When butyrate rings one of the doorbells, it rings a particular doorbell on a cell called a dendritic cell, that cell's entire program shifts just by ringing the doorbell. That's it, just ring. And then the dendritic cell, it changes. Instead of saying, sound the alarm, oh my goodness, sound the alarm. Instead of saying that, it just says, hey, let's keep things calm. It starts generating anti-inflammatory signals that produce more TREGs, more Tregs. And here's the third benefit that's crucial for MS specifically. These fatty acids, they help maintain the blood-brain barrier, the BBB. That's the protective fence around your brain. And so here's the chain reaction in MS. Here's what's happening. You have fewer of the fiber-eating bacteria. They have weird names, like super weird names, like Faecalibacterium prausnitzii, Roseburia, Coprococcus, weird names. These are the electricians that I mentioned earlier. They're the brake fluid factory, and they're disappearing. They're just not working. They're like, I ain't working anymore. Fewer of these bacteria means less butyrate. It means less propionate. And less brake fluid means softer brakes. Softer brakes means the Th17 soldiers, they just run wild. Hey, shoot first, ask questions later. And while this is happening, your brain's fence is weakening, making it easier for those soldiers to go into your brain. Now, if this were just an interesting theory, it would be a cool research paper and nothing more. But a team of German researchers, they asked a very simple question. They said, what if we give MS patients the missing molecule? What if we replaced the brake fluid? So they gave patients 1 gram of sodium propionate per day. It's a small amount and it's not a pharmaceutical drug. It's a simple salt of a fatty acid that your gut bacteria are supposed to produce, but they're not. And within 2 weeks of just giving people with MS this sodium propionate, within 2 weeks, the patient's brake cells, the Tregs, they increase by 25 to 30%. The warrior cells, the soldiers, the Th17 cells, they decreased. The balance was shifted. And then they followed up with these patients 3 years later. They followed up, for 3 years. The ones who stayed on propionate, they had fewer relapses, their disability stabilized, and their brains showed less shrinkage on MRI. Let me say that again. 1 gram of a naturally occurring molecule, sodium propionate, taken daily as a supplement, showed 3 years of measurable benefit, and it didn't interfere with their meds. So companies, they spend billions of dollars like developing pharmaceutical drugs that suppress the immune system in like different ways, and many of those drugs they work. Many of them work to suppress the immune system, but it doesn't restore anything. So imagine your car is leaking brake fluid and your mechanic only makes fluid, it makes the fluid leak less. So it's kind of like, okay, hey, mechanic, my brake fluid is leaking. You can see it leaking. And he says, okay, here you go. Let me make it leak less. He doesn't actually fix it. He didn't fix the leak. He just basically added some fuel and just said, hey, all right, here, it just won't leak as much. Like that's what he's doing. That's what current drugs are doing. You wouldn't put up with that. You'd be pissed off. You'd be like, yo, fix the damn leak. Like, what's wrong with you? That's exactly how current meds work. They don't replace anything. They don't actually fix the leak. You need to give your immune system back the brake fluid that it was supposed to have all along. You need to fix that damn brake fluid. And there's also a practical question that you should be asking. If butyrate and propionate come from fiber-eating bacteria, and those bacteria, they eat fiber, then can't you just eat more fiber? And the answer is kind of. So high fiber diets, they are associated with higher short chain fatty acid levels, but here's the catch. If the bacteria that eat the fiber aren't already depleted, eating more fiber isn't enough. If they are already depleted, then eating more fiber isn't enough. So it's kind of like putting gas in a car that has no engine. So it's kind of like if the bacteria aren't there and you're eating fiber, it's like, well, it doesn't matter. Like you're putting gas in a car that has no engine. You need the bacteria and the fiber. And that's why I made a whole other video on this thing called tributyrin. That's like a whole other video. Let me talk about pipeline number 2, your brain's dimmer switch. The second pipeline, it involves an amino acid called tryptophan. And certain gut bacteria, like they take tryptophan from your food and they convert it into a family of small molecules called indoles, I-N-D-O-L-E-S, indoles. Indoles are small enough to cross the blood-brain barrier. They can physically travel from your gut, through your blood, and into your brain. And once inside your brain, they find a receiver. And think of it like a dimmer switch on a lamp. And the lamp is your brain inflammation. So this is the dimmer switch to your inflammation. When these indoles are active, when they activate that switch, the lamp gets dimmed. The inflammation goes down. And when there aren't enough indoles to activate the switch, the lamp is at full brightness. The inflammation is all the way on high. So the scientific name for this switch is like, it's AHR. It's like aryl hydrocarbon receptor, the aryl hydrocarbon receptor, AHR. But think of this as just a dimmer switch because that's what it does. So a Harvard research group, they figured out exactly how this dimmer switch works, and it's like a two-step relay, like a two-step process. Step 1, the indoles, they go from your gut. Well, the indoles from your gut, they activate the dimmer switch in microglia, your microglia cells. These are your brain's immune cells. The microglia, they're like the janitors of your brain. They patrol the hallways, they clean up the debris, they decide whether to call for backup. When their dimmer switch is working, they produce a calming chemical signal. So that's the first step. This step 2 is that calming signal, it reaches astrocytes. These are the star-shaped cells that make up a huge portion of the brain's like support structure. And those lesions on your MRI, that's astrocytes. So the sclerosis in multiple sclerosis is astrocytes. And when astrocytes receive the calming signal from microglia, they go into a maintenance and repair mode. They support nerve cells, they clean up the environment, and they keep inflammation low. But when that dimmer switch, when it fails, when there aren't enough indoles because the bacteria that make them are depleted, the janitors, they send a completely different signal. Instead of saying, hey, everything's fine, keep maintaining, they say, danger, go into attack mode, attack, attack, attack. The astrocytes, they flip, they stop repairing, they start producing toxic molecules, and they damage your nerves and your myelin, and it's not good. So MS patients, they show lower levels of these indoles in their blood, and the inflammation lamp is cranked up. It's cranked all the way up. Nobody's turning it down. And here's the twist that's really important. Not all tryptophan eating bacteria are healthy. So lactobacillus is usually good. Okay, like if you get a probiotic, you usually see lactobacillus in this probiotic. But a specific species called Lactobacillus reuteri actually made animal models of MS worse. So you shouldn't just take like a probiotic for autoimmune conditions, just be like, oh, let me take a probiotic. Like you have to think which probiotic, which strain, what does it produce, in what context? Because a bacterium that helps in one condition, it might hurt in another. And the details, they really do matter. And in MS specifically, the wrong probiotic could theoretically make things worse. So does that mean you should avoid all probiotics? Not at all. Of course you don't. If you have MS, you just want to avoid the Lactobacillus reuteri. Pipeline number 3, your liver's recycling plant. So each time that you eat something with fat in it, like olive oil on a salad, butter on a toast, the fat on a piece of salmon, your liver, it releases bile acids into your small intestine to help break down that fat. And your body recycles about 95% of these bile acids. They loop back to the liver and then they get reused. But that other 95, the other 5%, the other 5%, the bile acids, they don't get recycled in the small intestine. They travel down to your colon. In your gut bacteria, it takes the leftover bile acids and it transforms them. They chemically convert into completely new molecules called secondary bile acids. So think of it as like a recycling plant. Your liver, it sends down like raw glass bottles. Your gut bacteria, it melts them down and it reshapes them into something more valuable. In this case, it reshapes them into like powerful anti-inflammatory compounds. These secondary bile acids are like fire extinguishers built into your immune system. They hit 2 specific calm down buttons on your immune cells. And when those buttons are pressed, the master inflammatory switch inside the cell, a thing called NF-kappa B, NFKB, which is like the command center for inflammatory responses, it gets suppressed. So the cells, they produce fewer inflammatory signals. So the fire goes out before it even spreads. In MS, your recycling plant is short-staffed. Of course it is. So the bacteria that do this is the bile acid transformation, like they're depleted. I mean, they're just short-staffed. So you end up with lower levels of these natural fire extinguishers circulating in your blood. And this deficit, it gets worse as the disease gets worse. So people with a progressive MS, they have the lowest levels. And they did a study of over 900 people with MS, and they found that the people with the lowest level bile acid levels, they were the most likely to reach like major disability milestones, like needing a cane to walk or just completely losing the ability to walk. So think about it. If the problem is the missing fire extinguishers, what if you just gave people the fire extinguisher in a pill? That's exactly what researchers did. That's what they tested. So they gave 54 progressive MS patients a supplement called TUDCA. TUDCA, that's what I call it, TUDCA, TUDCA, which is basically one of the recycled bile acids in a capsule form. They gave them 2 grams per day for 16 weeks. The results, well, it was safe, it was well tolerated. It produced like measurable shifts in the immune cells. They had fewer of the aggressive types and more of the regulatory types, the TREGs. So it's not a miracle, but it's a real biological signal from a supplement like propionate, TUDCA. It isn't a patented pharmaceutical. It's available as a supplement. All this stuff is available as supplements. And just like propionate, it's essentially replacing something the body should be making, but it's just the bacteria isn't. It's just not there. So think about like everything. Like, do you see a pattern? It's the bacteria is just understaffed. Your gut factory is understaffed. Essentially, products aren't being made. And when researchers, when they just give patients these missing products directly, the immune system, it starts to balance. It starts to rebalance. People like to say that MS is a snowflake disease. It's different for everyone. But I think that people say that is more like a cop out, and just kind of just to not make simple changes that they can make to actually change the progression of the disease. I mean, I think people say it almost as like a way to give up. Like, well, it's different for everybody. Like, and it's like they say it as a way to give up. Like saying that it's a snowflake disease because it gives them permission to say, well, it's out of my hands. It's out of my hands. Nothing I can do about it. You need to understand that there are things you can do about it, no matter what level you're at. All right, let's talk about pipeline number 4, when the walls come down. So your gut, it has a wall, and I mean that literally. Like there's an actual wall in your gut. Between the bacteria-filled interior of your intestines and the bloodstream, like between these, on the other side, the bloodstream on the other side, there's a wall made of a single layer of cells. This wall is one cell thick. That's all that separates the microbial world from your blood. These cells are held together by a molecular clasp, like molecular clasps called tight junctions. And when the tight junctions are secure, the wall is sealed. It lets nutrients through that should be let through. It keeps the dangerous stuff out, the bacteria, the toxins, partially digested food particles. All of it stays in the intestine side where it belongs instead of in your bloodstream. Think about it as like a nightclub with a really good bouncer. The right people get in, the troublemakers stay out. And in a lot of people with MS, the bouncer is asleep. The tight junctions, they're not tight anymore, they're just loose. So the wall, it develops these cracks and things start to leak through. The bouncer is asleep, people just start walking in. Just people that shouldn't be in there, they just start walking in. And the most dangerous thing that leaks in is a molecule called lipopolysaccharides, LPS. It's a piece of the outer shell of a certain bacteria. And to your immune system, LPS is a code red. All hell break loose, fire alarm. When your immune system sees LPS, it's like, oh, hell to the no. But here's where it gets really bad. Like it makes it really bad, okay? When your immune cells in your bloodstream come across LPS, they go into emergency mode. Inflammatory signals, they flood the system. In your body, it acts like it's fighting a massive infection, even though no infection exists. There's a protein called zonulin, 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 that controls how tight the tight junctions are. When zonulin levels rise, the tight junctions, they loosen up. Zonulin's high, your tight junctions just loosen up. And zonulin, it doesn't just affect the gut wall. It also loosens the tight junctions in your blood-brain barrier, that fence around your brain. So you get a double breach. Toxins leaking into the blood from the gut, and your brain's defenses are being torn down. Researchers, they found that people with MS who have high zonulin levels were more likely to have active inflammation visible on a brain MRI. And in progressive MS, zonulin predicted how much disability would accumulate over the following year. That's bad. Like, think about it. Zonulin predicted how much disability they would have. The cycle is brutal, but it's very simple. It's brutal, but simple. Dysbiosis, it kills off the maintenance bacteria, just kills off the bacteria. The gut wall gets leaky. Bacterial toxins flood the bloodstream. Your immune system panics. Zonulin opens the blood-brain barrier. It opens the gut even more in the brain. And now you have a clear highway for activated immune cells to march just straight into your brain and attack the myelin. And it's like a country losing its police, its fire department, its border security, all at the same time, all in the same day. Everything falls apart all at once because the systems that were supposed to prevent the disaster, they were all being maintained by the gut bacteria that just disappeared. Let's talk about pipeline number 5, a case of mistaken identity. This is the most dramatic of the 5 pipelines. It wants to be a drama queen. So your immune system, it identifies threats by shape. Because remember, like your cells, they can't really see each other. Like they don't have eyeballs. So your immune system, it identifies threats by shape. Each T cell, it carries a receptor. And think of it as like a lock that fits a specific molecular shape. When the lock comes across the right shape on a virus, on a bacterium, on a foreign protein, it triggers an attack. The problem is that some gut bacteria carry proteins that are shaped almost identical to myelin. So to a T cell, they're indistinguishable. It's a case of mistaken identity, like an innocent bystander who looks exactly like a wanted criminal. Just mistaken identity. Oh, my bad. So researchers, they found like a specific protein on a surface of a common gut bacterium called Akkermansia muciniphila. They have weird names. And it looks very similar to a protein in the brain that the T cells couldn't tell. They just couldn't tell the difference. It just looks the same. So they couldn't tell the difference. The same T cells that were found inside brain lesions, the T cells that are physically inside the areas of the myelin damage, they reacted to this bacterial protein. So they thought they were attacking the same target. If you were to talk to these T cells, if the T cells could talk to you, they would say, hey, we are attacking the bad guys, even though they're attacking the good guys. They truly believe they're attacking the bad guys. They don't see themselves as villains. They see themselves as the heroes, even though they're attacking you. And when researchers, when they scaled up this idea, like scanning over 300,000 bacterial genomes from the human gut, they found 731 different bacterial proteins that mimic a key myelin target. 730 different ones, 731 different gut bacteria. And about half of those, they were predicted to be capable of activating T cells. So when one of those mimicry proteins were tested in mice, it triggered an MS-like disease. But, and this is a critical but here, mimicry alone is not enough. They showed that you need essentially two things for this to cause disease. So they essentially need the lookalike protein and an inflammatory environment. If you only have one, then it doesn't work. You need both of them. So when researchers put the mimicry protein into a harmless, non-inflammatory environment, like non-inflammatory bacterium, the disease, it was mild. It was like, whatever. When they put the same protein into an inflammatory bacterium, the disease was just severe. It was crazy. So think about that. Like the mistaken identity, it only leads to an arrest if the cops are already on edge. You need both the lookalike and the inflamed. You need the inflamed, angry environment and the lookalike for the immune system to actually attack. And guess what creates the inflamed, angry environment? The other four pipelines that we just talked about. The missing brake fluid, the broken dimmer switch, the depleted fire extinguishers, the crumbled wall, the leaky gut that you got going on, all of it creates an inflammatory context in which the molecular mimicry becomes dangerous. That's one more piece to think about, and it's really interesting. And so here's the thing, researchers, they showed that certain immune cells, specifically B cells that produce antibodies against the gut bacteria, they physically travel from the intestine to the brain during active MS relapses. So they're going from your gut to your brain, from your gut to your brain, gut to your brain. These are cells that were educated in the gut, they were primed by gut bacteria, and then they migrated through the bloodstream to the brain to participate in the attack. They were like, hey, you know what? I'm bored chilling here in the gut. Let's just go to the brain and cause some problems. That's what your B cells did. The gut and the brain are not separate compartments. I can't stress this enough. They're one connected immune system. What happens in the gut doesn't just influence the brain from a distance. Your gut, the gut-trained soldiers physically show up in the battle in your brain. So here's how the 5 pipelines work together. And I want to pause and make sure the big picture is really clear here, because these aren't 5 separate problems. They're one interconnected disaster. Imagine a town where everything depends on the water supply. The fire department needs water to put out fires. The garden needs water to grow food. The sewage system needs water to flush waste. The hospital needs water for patients. Now imagine The water plant workers go on strike. The fire department can't respond to fires. The gardens dry up. That way, food, it becomes scarce. The sewage backs up, contaminating the town. The hospitals can't function. One failure, it cascades into every system because they all depended on the same infrastructure. That's what happens in the MS gut. The bacteria that produces short chain fatty acids, the water plant workers, they are depleted. And because short chain fatty acids maintain the gut bacteria, they regulate the Tregs, they feed the bile acid transforming bacteria, they transform tryptophan bacteria, their loss, it cascades through everything. Fewer short chain fatty acids, it means a leakier gut. A leakier gut means more lipopolysaccharides in the blood. More lipopolysaccharides means more in a more inflamed environment. A more inflamed environment means molecular mimicry becomes dangerous instead of harmless. And the whole thing, it feeds back on itself. Inflammation damages the gut lining further, which lets more toxins through, which increases inflammation even more. It just compounds. This is why MS is so hard to treat, because it's hard to treat with a single targeted drug. You're not dealing with one problem. You're dealing with a network of problems. And the microbiome, it sits at the center of that network. It's also why restoring the microbiome rather than suppressing the immune system can be transformative. If you rebuild the water plant, every system downstream starts recovering. Okay, now let me introduce you to the actual workers, the actual bacteria here, the heroes, the villains, the double agents. Let's talk about the actual bacteria, because in the gut microbiome, not all bacteria are created equal. Some are helpful, some are harmful, some are just playing both sides. Like they're like, let me just play both sides. Let's just see. So here's the heroes. They have weird names, by the way. The heroes are the bacteria that are depleted in MS. This is the first one. The main one is Faecalibacterium prausnitzii. If I had to pick the single most important bacterium in the MS gut story, it would be Faecalibacterium prausnitzii. It's the biggest producer of butyrate. Remember, butyrate, the brake fluid. It's the biggest producer of butyrate in the human colon, and it's been found depleted in MS in at least 8 independent studies across different countries. Like, they're like, oh yeah, wow, it's really gone. And so think of it as the head electrician at the factory, the electrician that everyone at the factory loves. And when he gets fired, everyone else just starts to leave. It's like, oh, he's gone? All right, I'm gone too. And so when this one leaves, the lights, they just start going out. The next hero is Prevotella. Prevotella. So this one is consistently lower in people with newly diagnosed untreated MS. They found that Prevotella histicola, it suppressed MS-like disease just as effectively as Copaxone, which is a licensed MS drug. Like this, a single bacterium, it performed just as well as a pharmaceutical drug. Let that sink in. Then you have Roseburia, Coprococcus, Eubacterium. These are all brake fluid producers, and they're all depleted in someone with MS. All your good guys are leaving. Now let's talk about the villains. These are the bacteria that are enriched in MS. These are the bacteria that you don't want. You have villains with weird names, by the way. Weird. I swear they just make these names hard to pronounce on purpose. But they're weird names, and they'll produce lipopolysaccharides. Remember the fire alarm signal. So one of them is called Enterobacteria bacteriaceae. I think that's how you pronounce it. It's one that's been recently discovered, and they're not sure of what exactly it does, but it keeps showing up in the wrong places. So that they're just not sure. It's called there's another one called Eisenbergiella. Man, I don't even know why I'm saying this stuff. Like, they have weird damn names. Then you have the double agents. This double agent, Akkermansia. Akkermansia is really interesting, actually. Maybe I'll make a whole other video on this. But this is the most interesting and frustrating bacterium of the entire MS story. So it's supposed to be the good guy. If you were to look up Akkermansia, it is the good guy in most cases. It helps with the mucus lining in your gut, but it's consistently increased in people with MS. It carries the mimicry protein that I described. So in MS, it degrades the mucus layer of the gut, which could weaken the wall. And yet, strains of Akkermansia, they're isolated from MS patients, and actually like they isolate them and then they put it into mice and it protects the mice. Like it's really weird. It's a really weird bacteria. So the same bacteria that cause problems in MS, when they put it into mice, it helped the mice instead of hurting them. And I really think, remember the molecular mimicry where you need both inflamed environment plus the bacterium and all that, like the molecular mimicry thing, you need them together. I think that's what's going on with MS or with the Akkermansia one. So it's like, how can a species be a villain and a hero at the same time? It is basically different strains of the same species. They can do completely opposite things. It's kind of like saying dogs are dangerous. So it's like, well, are we talking about a golden retriever service dog, or are we talking about an aggressive stray? It's like, yeah, it's the same species, but very different behavior. So this is one of the biggest unsolved puzzles in the field. And it's why like they did a study in 2025, a study that proposed that the ratio between these bacterium, it really matters. It matters more than any single species. Like the ratio of bifidobacterium, which is a hero, to Akkermansia, the double agent, that matters. When that ratio drops, meaning there's less bifidobacterium relative to Akkermansia, the disease severity increases. And so this was validated across like multiple different studies, by the way. Then you have lactobacillus. This is another double agent. Most lactobacillus species, they seem helpful. They're in several probiotics and trials they use them, but as I mentioned earlier, one specific species, L. reuteri, Lactobacillus reuteri, it made things worse by pushing the brain's dimmer switch in the wrong direction. So when it comes to microbes, the specific species, it actually matters. Okay, so what's actually been tried in real people though? So we've talked about all these mechanisms in bacteria, but what has actually been tested in human patients that had real results? The strongest evidence out of everything was propionate, sodium propionate. I've already told you like the main findings of the 1 gram of sodium propionate per day. There's like an increase in the Brake cells, your Treg cells, within 2 weeks. A 3-year follow-up that they did, it showed fewer relapses, a stable disability, and less brain shrinkage on an MRI. So this was given as an add-on to existing MS drugs, not as a replacement, just an add-on. This has the strongest evidence out of all the stuff. Then the promising one was like bile acid supplementation, the TUDCA, TUDCA. They did 2 grams per day of the TUDCA and for 16 weeks, and they had like measurable immune cell changes. Then the promising but complicated ones are like some of the probiotics, because they haven't gotten the funding to look at all the different strains of these of the gut bacteria. Like they know L. reuteri, for example, they know it shows that it shows it could backfire in MS. But once they get the funding to look at this, to look at it in more detail, then they can say, okay, we know for sure, here's what it does. So what does this mean if you have MS? Now, I know what it's like to hear about the latest research. You've heard a ton of promises before. You've read headlines about things that turned out to be just hype in general. You've been disappointed by things that work in mice, but not in people. And I understand the skepticism. I'm not here to give you false hope. What I am here to tell you is that this is different from what you have heard. So first, the evidence has crossed from causal threshold. Well, it crossed into the causal threshold, meaning that we're not just saying people with MS might have different gut bacteria. People with MS have different gut bacteria. They're not saying that. They're saying bacteria from MS patients cause MS-like disease in animals and are replacing missing bacteria. Replacing the missing bacteria products, it shifts the immune function in human patients. They're saying this actually is a cause. We can see this. We've tested this and all these in these animals just with this gut bacteria, and it actually is a cause. And when you replace it, it shifts the immune function in human patients. That's a fundamentally different level of evidence. So second, the interventions, they are modifiable. So you can't change your genes. If they were like, well, it was a genetic thing, like you can't change your genes, but you can't like undo an EB virus infection. You can't undo that. If you get it, you can't undo it. You can't control whether you're exposed to like low vitamin D levels during childhood. You can't do anything about that. But you can change what lives in your gut through diet, through supplementations. You can do something. And third, this is the insight that I think is the most powerful. The problem may not be something bad invading your gut. The problem may be something good that's no longer there. The 2025 longitudinal study that tracked the MS patients over time, they found that most metabolites associated with the disease progression, they were decreased, not increased. So people with MS, they aren't getting sicker because of a pathogen like it just moved in. They're not getting sicker because something moved in. They're getting sicker because the bacteria that normally keep the immune system calibrated are disappearing. They're leaving. This reframing, it changes everything. You're not fighting an invasion, you're restoring a workforce. Now, what can you do with all this information today? Okay. Well, I mean, first off, don't stop your like DMTs. You don't want to stop any of that. I mean, you take it. Cool. Everything that I've described is complementary to MS medications. So the propionate trial, it was done with like on top of the current DMTs. So you need to consider your diet seriously. Like it all points in the same direction. Diets rich in fiber, diverse plant foods, fermented foods, they feed bacteria that produce the brake fluid and maintain the gut wall. And this isn't just MS. Like what you eat matters. And I want to take a step back for a moment before I'm done here. For most of history of the modern medicine, we've treated the body like a machine, like something that breaks and you fix it. This is how drugs work. One lock, okay, and just fix it. One molecule, boom, fix it. So a joint wears out, you repair it. An infection takes hold, you kill it with antibiotics. For acute problems, that approach works great. But for autoimmune diseases like MS, it doesn't fit that model. Nothing is broken in the traditional sense. Like the hardware is fine. The software, your immune system's instructions, they have been corrupted. Like there's nothing wrong with your immune system. It's working. It's just the instructions are bad. It's like, hey, stop attacking this thing. Like you got to reprogram it. And what the microbiome research reveals is that those instructions aren't written just by your genes. They're not written from your genes. They're written in real time every day by the bacteria that you host. It means your body isn't a closed system. It's a collaboration. It's a negotiation between human cells and microbial cells that's essentially been around for hundreds of thousands of years. And when the microbial side of that negotiation breaks down, the human side malfunctions. When the microbial side, when these guys leave, the human side malfunctions. Now, let me come back to the twins, okay? Remember, same DNA, same childhood, same home. One develops MS, the other one doesn't. And the bacteria from the sick twin, just the bacteria, it can recreate the disease in a lab animal, in a mouse. Something in her microbial ecosystem, it shifted in a way that her twin sisters didn't. Maybe a course of antibiotics at the wrong time, maybe dietary change, like maybe there was a stress event that altered her gut. We don't know what triggered the shift. We just don't know. And if the ecosystem can shift towards disease, it can also shift back. Your factory is understaffed. Your electricians, they left. The plumbers quit. The chemists are replaced by workers making the wrong products. And everything downstream, your immune balance, your gut wall, your brain barrier, your myelin, everything is suffering because of it, because you lost what should be there. And here's the thing about that factory. A factory can be rebuilt.